The wind had started to pick up again, rustling the leaves above and scattering droplets of rain from the overcast sky. The forest, though vast and seemingly endless, now felt like a trap, a cage for the soul. Liang Zhen stood motionless, feeling the lingering weight of his actions, of his return to power. He had acted on instinct, saving the woman from certain death, but the force of his power, the ease with which it had surged through him, unsettled him more than he cared to admit. He glanced at the two cultivators, lying unconscious on the ground. They had been nothing more than tools of the celestial court, puppets to an ancient and unyielding order. But in their eyes, he had seen the reflection of something much darker, a relentless system that had controlled the lives of countless mortals and immortals alike. The woman he had saved was now at his side, her trembling hands pressed against the wound on her side. She was pale, her eyes still wide with shock, but she seemed to draw strength from his presence. She had been running from the celestial court, but her eyes were not filled with fear alone. There was a deep yearning within her, a quiet, burning hope that Liang Zhen could feel. "You should go," he said, his voice low but commanding. "There are others who would come for you." She looked up at him, her eyes searching his face as if looking for something. "And you?" she asked, voice barely a whisper. "What will you do?" He stared into the distance, his gaze distant, focused on something beyond the horizon. "I have unfinished business." The woman did not question him. Instead, she gave him a small nod and took a cautious step back. She glanced at the fallen cultivators, then turned toward the forest, disappearing into the shadows of the trees. Her silhouette was barely a shadow against the stormy sky, but her presence lingered in the air like a faint echo. Liang Zhen stood there, his mind racing. Unfinished business. The phrase tasted like ash on his tongue. There was no denying the pull of power, no denying that the celestial court, with its laws and its broken promises, had left a deep scar within him. The court had destroyed his life, had manipulated and corrupted everything he had once stood for. He had not simply been betrayed by those he trusted, but by the very system that governed all of existence. The woman had spoken the truth. He had no choice but to fight. As his thoughts churned, a sudden presence behind him caught his attention. A familiar presence, one he hadn't expected. He turned sharply, only to find a figure stepping out from the shadows of the trees. It was Luo Xian, the celestial assassin, his pale face obscured by the hood of his cloak. His steps were deliberate, each one taken with the precision of a man who had spent his life in the shadows. Liang Zhen's eyes narrowed. "I thought I told you to stay away." Luo Xian paused, his face unreadable as always, but his eyes, the eyes of a man who had seen too much, a man who had lived and died 1,000 times over, told a different story. "I'm not here to fight you," Luo Xian replied, his voice as calm as the night itself. "I'm here to offer you something." Liang Zhen's fists clenched involuntarily. "I don't need anything from you." "You don't." Luo Xian stepped closer, the hint of a smirk playing at the edge of his lips. "Then why are you still standing here staring at the horizon? If you really wanted to be left alone, you wouldn't have taken that first step toward your destiny." Liang Zhen's gaze hardened. "What do you want?" Luo Xian didn't answer immediately. Instead, he studied Liang Zhen, as though measuring him, assessing the strength of his resolve. "You're not the only one with unfinished business," he said softly, "and you're not the only one seeking redemption or revenge." Liang Zhen took a step forward, his patience thinning. "Enough with the riddles. Speak plainly." Luo Xian tilted his head slightly, his gaze flickering to the unconscious cultivators at Liang Zhen's feet. "I know why you're here, Silent Immortal. I know what you seek." Liang Zhen felt the stirrings of anger rise within him, but he forced himself to remain calm. "Do you now? And what is it that you think I seek?" Luo Xian's lips curled into a smile, one that was almost imperceptible, but there nonetheless. "Power," he said simply. "But more than that, you seek to tear down the very foundation of the celestial court. You want to unravel their system, expose their lies, and free the realms from their chains. Am I wrong?" Liang Zhen's heart stilled at the words. They were true, more true than he cared to admit. But hearing them spoken aloud, so casually, from the lips of an assassin, made something inside him twist with unease. He didn't answer, only nodded once, a single sharp motion. Luo Xian took a step closer, his presence suddenly far more imposing than it had been before. "The celestial court will come for you. It doesn't matter how powerful you become or how many allies you gather. They will find you. They always do." Liang Zhen's eyes met his with cold resolve. "Then let them come." Luo Xian regarded him for a moment, as if weighing his words before speaking again. "And what will you do when they come? When they bring the full force of their power down upon you? When you realize that you cannot fight them alone?" Liang Zhen didn't flinch. "I will fight. But you cannot win this war alone," Luo Xian insisted, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "I have walked through the shadows of the celestial court. I have seen their reach. I know the weaknesses in their defenses. I can help you." Liang Zhen's mind raced. "Help me?" The thought of trusting anyone again, especially an assassin of the celestial court, made his skin crawl. But there was something about Luo Xian, a coldness, a precision, that hinted at the truth in his words. "I don't trust you," Liang Zhen said bluntly, "and I don't trust anyone who works for them." Luo Xian's smile faded, and for the first time, a flicker of something else passed through his eyes. "You don't need to trust me. You only need to trust the enemy we both share." Liang Zhen considered this, the weight of the assassin's words sinking deeper into his consciousness. He had no choice but to admit that the assassin spoke the truth. There were few, if any, who knew the inner workings of the celestial court as Luo Xian did, and his skills were undeniable. But trust was something that was earned, not given, and Luo Xian had not earned it yet. "You want to help me?" Liang Zhen said slowly. "Then prove it." Luo Xian studied him for a moment before replying, his voice still calm but tinged with a subtle edge. "Very well. When the time comes, I will be there, and when you need me, I will make sure the shadows are at your back." Luo Xian turned and walked away, disappearing into the trees, as silently as he had appeared. Liang Zhen stood alone again, his eyes lingering on the spot where the assassin had vanished. An ally. The idea felt foreign, but perhaps he was right. Perhaps the war he sought to fight was far larger than anything he could do alone. The celestial court was vast, and their enemies were many, but so too were the pieces of the crown of sovereignty, and he would find them.